This weekend, the first of 3 MCU films this year, Captain America: Brave New World, drops in theaters. So let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. If you've seen it, what did you think about it? If you haven't seen it yet, what are your expectations for the film? As for me, this is a movie I went into with a lot of skepticism. A big part of that is that I wasn't crazy about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I felt like that should have been an easy, solid double, and the writing itself brought the show down. And then they hired the writers of that show to write this movie. They hired the director of the movie Cloverfield Paradox to direct this film. Cloverfield Paradox is an infamously terrible movie. And then they delayed the film a year to do reshoots to fix the film. Now, there's been a lot of conflicting reports saying it was 3 months of reshoots, and then it was clarified it was only 22 days of reshoots, which is long reshoots, but it's not that extensive of reshoots. Other Marvel movies have had far more than that, which is true, but they delayed the movie to fix it. They delayed the movie to improve the action and add a new villain into the film. So it's corrective reshoots. Anytime that happens, it's a red flag.
What's going on with Captain America: Brave World? Are you still in it?
Releases in February. I wish it the best, but I am not a part of that. The script went through a lot of rewrites and reshoots, and so what I was there to do, essentially my role got either repurposed or completely erased.
So I went in very skeptical of what I was going to get. What did I think about the film? Let's get started with the good. And as I just mentioned, I went into this movie with low expectations, and in certain regards, it met my low expectations. We'll talk about that in the bad, but it also exceeded my expectations, meaning there was more good here than I was expecting. And the big thing that I really enjoyed about the film is that this is probably the most cohesive the MCU has felt since Endgame. Obviously, it's a follow-up to the Captain America movies, the end of Endgame, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but the actual plot of this movie is more a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, as well as a major plot point from the Eternals. There's a side character that's a follow-up to Black Widow, and it didn't feel like homework. It felt like we were actually in a shared universe where the events of that movie over there matter in this film right here. A lot of the recent projects, they feel like there's pockets in the MCU where there's stuff happening here and stuff happening over here, and they don't intertwine. Finally, it feels like everything intertwines a little bit. It matters. If a gigantic creature pops up out of the Indian Ocean, it matters for planet Earth. That's what I enjoyed about this film, and it just reminded me of a different era of the MCU, and you realize, sometimes you don't realize what you're missing until you get it back. Or likewise, I actually have been complaining about the lack of cohesiveness, and this movie delivered the thing I've been complaining recent projects haven't had. Other big thing here, I thought Anthony Mackie did a good job leading the film. That has been one of those questions of course, he's stepping into the role of Captain America. Will that work? And I think they found the right space to put his character into, with the right kind of exploration of him feeling the weight of taking up the mantle, exploring the fact that he's not on the super soldier serum, and he feels like a real person. And they treat him like a real person with struggles, anxieties, things like that. And so it just makes him more relatable. We are in a very fantastical film with over-the-top action, and then it pauses to have little moments to allow him to be a person and distinct from Steve. And so I thought that was handled really nicely. Big standout in the movie, though, is the chemistry between Sam, Isaiah, and Joaquin. And like, there's really nice dynamics in there that they feel like people that are friends, that have a history, that banter, they joke with one another, they're mentoring each other, they challenge one another. Once again, just kind of anchoring the film in relationships that feel real and lived in. My favorite character in the movie is Isaiah Bradley. We'll talk more about him later on in this, but I think I enjoyed the idea of his character in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I think here he's a more well-rounded character that still has this very complicated history, but you get to see more of his lighter side, his funny side, his old man side, his strength, his anger, and I just love this actor, Carl Lumbly. Ever since I saw him in Alias 20 years ago, I've been a big fan of his, and so the idea of him as the forgotten Captain America, I think is just a nice little touch that adds history to the world of the MCU in an interesting way. There's a lot of my favorite scenes in the movie do involve him. Other one you got to talk about here, Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross. MCU's couldn't put in a bit of a tricky situation because the original actor died, and then Thunderbolt is such a pivotal part of this story. They bring in, of course, legendary actor Harrison Ford, and for the nature of Thunderbolt's character arc, there's a lot of advantages of bringing in Harrison Ford, where Harrison Ford is a little bit more of a naturally charismatic actor than William Hurt, that he just has that Harrison Ford charm to him that, of course, made him one of the biggest movie stars of all time. And so when you're trying to have a more sympathetic Thunderbolt, that he's the character in the movie that has the most definitive arc in the film. That it has the most layers of a very complicated past, trying to change, but still working through what it requires to really change. And so when you have someone like a Harrison Ford that can have a emotional range, plus can be a bit more sympathetic while being cranky and angry, I think there's some nice things that came from that. Going back to what I said at the beginning of the positive, I left the theater with some of the same feelings I had in the earlier phases of the MCU, just excited about a shared universe. And excited as it felt like all of these different stories, plot lines, different genres were pulling together towards something. And I haven't felt that with the MCU basically since Phase 3. There have been positives, but it wasn't that cohesiveness. So there was a lot in here that reminded me of the good old days and felt like we're moving back towards that. But, this also very much felt like a Marvel Studios project from an era where they microwave scripts and then try and fix it in post. So we got a lot more to talk about here. Let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. As we go into this, these aren't good or bad things about the movie. These are just frequently asked questions. There are other things to discuss with the film. What do you need to watch before seeing Captain America: Brave New World? Well, this film very much feels like the follow-up to many different Marvel projects. Of course, you need to watch the Captain America movies, in particular Winter Soldier and Civil War, where Sam appears. You need to watch the last 10 minutes of Endgame. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier explores Sam's journey to becoming Captain America and introduces the Isaiah Bradley character, who's very prominent in this film. On a plot level, the film is very much following up The Incredible Hulk. The character with the biggest arc here is Thunderbolt Ross, and so to understand how he's perceived, you need to have a fresh recollection of Incredible Hulk, but even our main villain goes back to that film. So there's, on a plot level, primarily this is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, but another major plot point in here is this thing popping up out of the Indian Ocean. That is from the movie Eternals. Now, if you don't want to watch the whole movie, you can probably just watch a summary because it is just kind of explaining what happens in the third act of the film. And it's just a plot device, not actually in-depth characters or anything like that. So you don't need the details of that film. Other thing people always asked about, does Captain America: Brave New World have a post-credit scene, and is it worth sticking around for? There is one scene. It is a true post-credit scene after the credits, and It is essentially a tease for the future. It mildly follows up a couple characters in the movie and teases where things are headed. It's not flashy. It's not a cameo. It's all dialogue with characters that are established. So it's not like this wow-inducing one where you're like, oh, you gotta stick around to check this thing out. But it is them starting to tease and lay the breadcrumbs, however you want to phrase it, for where things are headed. That they're trying to pull us towards these next big event films, and this one heads us in that direction. Final question people have been asking is, how much is Red Hulk in the movie? Now, I don't really like to go into spoilers of getting too specific on questions like that in my reviews, but I will say, generally speaking, if you watch the trailers for a movie and a character only appears in one setting, they probably only appear in that one sequence. Red Hulk was in this movie as much as I expected him to be in this movie based off of what you see in the trailers. Not how prominently Red Hulk is featured in the posters and trailers, but the way that he is used, which is to say, he's only really seen in this one context during the daylight. I think that tells you how much he's likely to be in the film. And this is a Captain America movie, not a Hulk movie. So I didn't go into this movie expecting there to be a ton of Red Hulk, because I don't think that would make a whole lot of sense. With that said, let's move on to the bad. In the positive, I mentioned that this is the most cohesive the MCU has felt. Unfortunately, that cohesiveness doesn't really apply to the movie itself and its story and storytelling, where this is a film where you absolutely could feel the reshoots. For probably the first 30 minutes of the movie, I was really on board. I was like, okay, all right, this is a lot better than I was expecting it to be. This thing is actually pretty good. And then once the plot kicks in and you start getting into the conspiracy and the investigation aspect of it, it dramatically dropped in quality. It got more convoluted, and you could just feel the reshoots. We're cutting between too many sequences and showing too many images. Felt like we're just trying to tape together the plot with all these different shots and sequences to make sense of something that we were trying to fix. And in particular, it's the middle act where you feel the reshoots. And there's just a lot of sequences where it feels like that Anthony Mackie's in front of a green screen talking to a Giancarlo Esposito that is not there, and stuff like that. And we're going to close-ups. They're not in frame together. Right along those same lines, as much as I enjoyed the chemistry of our heroes, I felt like the main plot, conspiracy, and our villain, the leader, were all a pretty big, gigantic miss for me. That it's a master plan from a character that's supposed to be incredibly intelligent, and it all felt very obvious and predictable where it was headed. There was no real intrigue you could figure out really quickly. I wouldn't consider this a spoiler, but like mind control plays into the plot of the film. And characters keep off like shrugging off mind control, like, mind control, are you kidding? Despite the fact that the person that they're talking to, Sam, his best friend, very famously, Bucky, was mind controlled for 50 years. So like, they treat mind control as if like, what? Mind control? Are you ridiculous? They treat something that it's so obvious that there's a conspiracy and stuff happening, but it's treated as if, how are we going to get out of this mess? Oh no, what's happening? And here's the problem. When you have a character that's super intelligent, that's supposed to have a master plan, you have to have a really intelligent script. And they don't. And it's really difficult to have a nice, tight, clever master plan if you're having to duct tape it together with reshoots. That's literally the concept of our main villain, is that he thought it all through, and the script wasn't all thought through before they filmed it. And I think somewhat tied to that, when you're duct taping your movie together with reshoots, what do you have to do a lot of? You have to have characters pause to explain the plot to you. So there's so many different scenes where Thunderbolt Ross keeps going, man, we just need this treaty to go through. I mean, I just really need this treaty to go through. Man, if this treaty falls through, it's all lost. He just keeps saying that over and over again. Likewise, I think our main villain's motivation is explained to us like 3 different times in a row in a span of about 10 minutes. They just keep explaining the plot to you because they're trying to patch it together rather than having a cohesive story that tells its story through motion pictures rather than exposition and dialogue. That's the consequences of microwaving a script and trying to fix it in post. And they want this to be a grounded political thriller in the vein of Winter Soldier, and it's simply not. That was a smarter movie that was more grounded and had more captivating politics to it. This is very simplistic stuff with no exploration of the politics and very silly stuff. With, of course, we have a Red Hulk and we have Falcon battling jets. There's a part where he's like on top of a jet and he grabs his shield and holds it like this in front of himself. If you know anything about aerodynamics, if you start doing this with a shield right in front of you on a jet going hundreds of miles per hour, you will fly backwards. That's nitpicking in a sense, but it's also like, that's the movie you're watching. That it's like, we're more interested in what's a cool, fun action sequence than the logic of what happens in the sequence. Versus Winter Soldier, which was like, let's try really hard to make this believable. It was a better crafted movie. It's trying to copy the better crafted movie without the craft. Final thoughts on here. I just felt like there was a lot of underutilized stuff. In particular, Isaiah Bradley was my favorite character in the movie. And I can't fathom why they didn't do more with him in the back half of the film. I was watching it thinking they were going to do a few things that would have been really, really cool. And it felt like all the setup was wasted, that it wasn't paid off. And that's the frustration of this movie, that there's things in here that I felt like we are moving in the right direction. And then it just feels like another one of these projects coming out of an era where they're hiring weaker writers and directors, and they're giving them less shepherding, less attention from Kevin Feige, pouring his secret sauce on the project, and then they try and fix it in post. And so you get these disjointed movies that feel duct taped together. And that's really disappointing because there was promise here. Real quick before I give you my final thoughts, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about the film. Also, come back over the next few days. I will have more coverage of this film as well as the Captain America films in general. I think I'm going to do a ranking of the Captain America suits. And over on my second channel, I went back and looked at the old Captain America movies, the 1979 TV movie and the 1990 film. I did some deep dives into those ones, which are pretty fun. You can check those out, I don't know, somewhere around here. Simply put, this movie isn't the disaster that a bunch of people thought it was going to be. There's more positive here than I was expecting, but at the same time, it can be really rough at times. So, a true mixed bag of a film. Overall, it's a C+ on the entertainment scale, a 6.5. And MCU fanatics, of course, you're going to go see it in the theater. Normies, you can wait to stream this one on Disney+. Be sure to come back for my other coverage of Captain America movies over the next few days, or you can check out my coverage of the old Captain America movies right, I don't know, somewhere around here. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.